so ye jo ye ge ye la cha re ya no ye me ye ngo ye ya ye ta ye me ye no ye ngo ye su ye go ye ra ye ba ye de ye ba ra ye de ye me ye no ye de ye ba ra ye na ye so ye 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 sa ye be ye ge ye wa ye de ye na ye zho ye ge ye lo ye ga ye be ye da ye che ye ba ra ye je ye ze ye lo ye sa ye cha ye ba ye ye me ye nye ye bo ye re ye za re ye sha ye me ye za ye re ye re ye ze ye che ye me ye je ye me ye o ye bo ye ja ye me ye bo ye ma ye ye jo ye ze ye za ye be ye da ka ye je ye ge ye be ye zo ye je ye zo ye ma ye ma sa ye cha ye be sha ye la ye zo ye wa ye de ye me ye ze ye be de re je ye re ye ze ye che ye me ye je ye be o ye bo ye ja ye be ya ye de ye bo ye ma ye le ja ye ze ye zo ye be ya da ye ka ye je ye ge ye be ye zo ye je ye zo ye nga ye lo ye zo ye cha ye be ye sha ye la ye zo ye wa ye de ye me ye ze be de re je ye re ye ze ye che ye me ye je ye me o ye bo ye ja ye be ye yo ye de ye bo ye ma ye le jo ye ze ye zo ye be ye da ye ka ye je ye ge be zo ye je ye za ye ma ye ba ye lo ye zo ye cha ye be na ye zo ye ba ye de ye ba ye de ye za ye be ye la ye ma ye re ye ba ye na ye zo ye nye ga ra ye be ye me ye de ye yo ye la ye ga ye de ye che ye me ga ye ne ye je ye zo ye de ye ko ye zo ye to ye ga ye zho ye ze ye de ye zo ye ba ye de ye za ye la ye ma ye re ye bo ye je ye da ye zo ye je ga ra ye be ye me ye de ye yo ye la a ye de ye je ye bo ye go ye ne ye je ye zo ye cha ye na ye de ye ma ye ma ye zho ye ze ye de ye zo ye ba ye de ye za ye la ye ma ye re ye ba ye je ye da ye de ye nye ga be ye me ye de ye yo ye la ye ga ye de ye je ne ye je ye zo ye de ye chaya jaya nye bo paraya daya daya paraya jaya maya saya jaya me jaya raya baya raya maya me gaya naya gaya gaya Soya soya raya raya ye 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 yo mo ye soya jare yo ya la ye jaya ye ya la ye de ya ta ga ye de ga ye Aya ya ra ya nga ya de ya ba ya ra ya sa ya nga ya ba ya de ya sa ga ya de ya na ga ya de ya nga ya de ya ba ya ra ya nga ya de ba ya ra ya sa ya nga de ba ya de ya sa ga ya de ya da ya nga ya de ya ba ya ra ya nga ya ba ya ra ya sa ya nga de ba ya de Zaya gaya gire dan ra je je shiva dan min de ne ve jana chava da timba je je pu so so je ninja den de de le ai jo ai sa je bu je jo je me da ra e re ra le je nyen de je mo Sanje shinde mende bhava ye droge namda shen je para ye sho ye da ye ngor la men kana ya da ya me Sanje sheda sanje shona na janjo balu da ne janjo Dagi chi 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 ve so je rola pe je so je rola yo so je che da so je no no jang jo ba de da ne jang Dagi chi 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 ve so je rola pe je so je rola yo so je che da so je no no jang jo ba de da ne jang so je Dagi chi 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 ve so je rola pe je so je rola yo Lasta kulun jüze de ne simje tamje tam lanna ma ya ta zo sa ye ko mo mo jin ni ta ba shi ti shi de tambe shi se nya be go ni ne kulun chang se je ma tu ji se ta ni sem ba shi
May I remind all of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate the highest form of motivation. We call it bodhicitta motivation or the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. So with that kind of motivation, we should engage in this teaching. Allow me to read about a page from this great treatise on the stages of path enlightenment. We call it Lamrim Chemo, volume number 3 in English translation, just to give you the blessing of oral transmission.
Jungdile den jo sunin da jala zaba jungzi jene zumba yang ma zuin ma riba de mana la nang bola so ba su so de tang sim de so la so ba jungzi jene de mana de ran sin ne ma riba de mana na ba de me na wo di je 대당 가지 군도 대야 전반에 군도 대보만이 노시 공부라서 군도 대보란 저바당 손이서 군도 대보 메셔비 체버러 메더듯이 주나린지 레시지 나린지 요티지 타니베 시와로 노자잉 소니라서 바니 지데베 시와니 지버 zu바도 지데고데 대보 메절라 공부라서 바니 좀바 이제 대 좀바르 지데베 시베 군도 요쇼 메네 지데 요고도 대보 메셔 그냥 대달의 유디니라 타지베 시발라와테 데딘진 테바신도 이제니 저 타지베 시발라 시드리 시절로 몰라 테바인 기타타지베 시발라테 데 시발말로 바바이나 타니드 트바 동게로 냠나 타니에디베 저와다게로 냠나 타니드 트베 트세 타니베 타니도 시바와 칸라 된 신제요 몰라 바샤비베 타니에비베 시바니 찌기는 게양 교화인이 저와 타지 디니니 소소와 임비 지신겐데 따라서라랑 그거 저베다신 리베고 보니 돈도모디오 머르메 타니도 사고라 대다웨 타니비 시고 되니 엄부시바나와 트바일바 텔레신 타니비 시바바랑가 남제 오니 트바 마임비 민게데 베나 지디베 타니라 밀라네 유로 라라 유 지디베 타니라 밀라라 유 밀라라 미지바 시디베 라라 시베 책지 인정 유베 타 라라와 등 메베 라라니 동지 라바민조 민조 바시노 어때요 마주는 지디베 시바랑가와 때네 저기 오마베 마주하면도 지데니레 데니 시조 소마타로 디레 시로모베 다 추바라 조라 대단해야 유즈바 조바 민게데 유데바라 조네 너니 유진집에 조바 대방게 와이노 타니에 주 겨와이노 타니에 주 타우집에 gemata 부르 데베도 타니에 주바 인자 군조 대마조바 민게데 마리베 런시데 군조데 시송베 마리베 군조디 모르 대바당시 나마라 셔나 랑고 저번고바 강게 모르샤베 군조바디 모르즈바니 민게 쉐로 다데 샤고 있어 다 춘좀데 디레 그상한저 갈사 군조 대발라 양다 군조 대발다 로베 군조니 샤즈한다 텐주와게 다데 런지웨나 유일 군조 대발 샤마도 유제라 양로니 샤고 말아 유일야 에는 송년다 에는 기메탈노서 당어서야 로베 군조 샤다 송지 미키서 란지 이서 디게데 양다 군조 가서 디 속다 다츠라고 속다 다츠서 에네 양다 군조 샤고와 다티샤네 다 텐주에 유제라야 샤고다 베네 송년 양 가자 로베고제 바기 송년나 시바테 로베고제 인스 어떤 샤는 다들 런지베 쯔바임부다도와 가지디 다 유제라 가서 로베고제 샤디 텐주에 투모모 시지르고 런지면서 샤고 말봐 어디 마샤 인자 다 유제라 양 로니 샤야디 테게면도스 가르세나 송년 나와디 송년 창시디 요 말디 이니거 송년 나야지 요라 봤어 내가 나이 수소대 그 나와다 말나 그 나야지 그 너무 트바 찍바 나시 시지 요바 찍바레스 이 코인이야 이 속나에 시바디 양다 군서 송년나에 시바디 로베 군서 샤야 문도 나오다 어디 쯔바래도 봐 어디 쯔바다 어디 디라 공부를 군자 되면 저 송년서 군자 되면 저 체험에도 시전을 내지요. 다티 렌들 되자거다. 다들 독슬라운데 체험 되면 도 슬라운데 클라우르선 다티 렌들 되라도 로루 렌들 되미다. 그래서 저번 송년서 군자 되면 민조비 체험에도 시전을 내지요. 다티 먼저 팔라위다. 다 디레는 저는 송년디 그 유익샤시나 아니 송년디 양 로베고도샤 속디 양다고도샤 요 말바스 이러와 유젤에 그 취모디샤 유일하고 송년코나면 가서 시시에면 송년 요러와 다 속랑 통다버 주면 속에 코니 직발해샤스 시즈 아니 or digital karsa. Took junior car any chron in the Yula young long use Minja said, Queen no he ever the no the mouth of a jigbat is that those them get Ronglu in that. Ronglu Resha.
Again, Ranglu the young Jews kind of looking.
Ronglu part, Ronjibal Lagoda.
Now,
Ronjibal. And this is
Ranglu get thank you, but Rangibal Palagos.
Oh, that German Sungora, that they take you a Ronjibal Lagoda.
No, thank you, but land or curriculum was again.
That's what the career said that Ronjibagi, children usual young law shall take Mundus Lara. What Timade is a did take Mundus Lara.
No.
Or till less than that, they don't look at the Dillago Karsa. In a churong get you lining usually young law take the children, you young law shall go to take Marabas, that goes to see so Sunye, the Sunye Shanshi about your marriage, Sunye Kono Yoravas. In the Suzo Tomato make the Suzo, you have a chick barrier, and the Queen Yanda, the love chairman to ask you, say, so the Gozung land, because I still allow it to roll in Sarah. I'll teach you, Shanna.
Geshe read a couple of passages from the bottom of page 173 to 175. As I explained this to you the other day, that according to Savatantrika Madhyamikans, that sub-school of middle way school, they only talk about what we call mistaken and unmistaken with regard to objects. I think probably I use the word correct and incorrect in that sense. Remember, I struggled with the translation of the Tibetan term called kunzop, Yangda kunzop and Lokwe kunzop. So I can translate as correct or incorrect, conventionality or something like that. Although here they translate as mistaken or unmistaken. So they posit such distinctions with regard to objects. Okay, for example, they would say that the visible forms and the auditory sounds, these are correct conventionalities or the unmistaken objects. Okay? Whereas when we talk about like an illusion or magical creations, and then they consider this as incorrect conventionality or mistaken, mistaken things because an illusion does not represent what the reality is. Okay? So they do make those distinctions. Okay? But Savatantrika Madhyamikans do not make similar distinctions in terms of subjective perceptions or experiences. Okay? Now, Prasangika Madhyamikans, they also make distinctions, similar distinctions in terms of subjective perceptions. Okay? In a sense, it is a unique characteristic of Prasangika Madhyamikans to talk about what we call incorrect perceptions or mistaken perceptions, Lokpe Kunzop. I'm also using the Tibetan terms side by side, okay, so that we fall back on that one. And so now Savatantrika Madhyamikans take issue with that. How can you talk about this correctness and incorrectness or mistakenness and unmistakenness with regard to the perceptions? That's not making any sense. Okay? And then Prasangika Madhyamikans respond to that, well, in which case you can't really talk about those two things with regard to the objects as well. Because in terms of object, what you say is this, that when we look at what called reflection of an image in the mirror, okay, what they say is that that face in the mirror appears as a real face, but that's where it is mistaken, because it is just an image of representation. It's not the real face, right? So the person, Savatantrika Madhyamikans say, well, that is the incorrectness part. Okay? But still, they said there is something there, an image that appears to you. So that part is the correctness, correct conventionality, or the unmistaken conventionality. Okay? That's how they make the distinctions. And so then the Savatantrika, so the Prasangika Madhyamikans say, well, that's what we're talking about in the same terms of how objects appear to our perceptions as truly existent, right? That is the mistaken part, but they really don't exist that way, right? That is the correct, correctness part of the, I know, it's hard to say in English. That is the unmistakenness part. Well, I have to create all these words. And so therefore they said, that's what we're talking about. Just like you say that in terms of the face in the mirror, there are these two aspects. There is an appearance of an image in the mirror, and that is correct. Okay? Whereas that image appearing as a face is incorrect because it is devoid of real face. It's not the real face. So in the same way, we are also saying that in terms of perceptions, things appear to our perceptions as truly existent. Ding, wrong. But they really don't exist that way. That is the correctness part. So there's two things we can distinguish and talk about here as well. No.
That dealing the wrong dealing Javika.
No.
Tinika Tanya Shiva non drawing. Sunil Lasa when Jidi Shiva Zumber Dogby, Jidi Guru the Minjola. Gumbola Soba, Zumba in Zumba Jidi Shiva Kundi Shiva Mini, Jidi Guru the Joe Yamnase. That is Ronjiva, right? When you do any Karsa, you know what the matter of Jigba, usually you have a Jigba the ready, in Jigding be called Zumatoya, the mother Chava Shell Hasho race. That is Ronjiva Lara, or the Ronjiv de la, that is so young. You are the Ronjiv.
And so now the seventh thing that Madam begins to respond back to the Prasangikas. Well, no, that's not exactly the same here. Because in the case of reflection of face in the mirror, ordinary people, the worldly people know it is an image of the face, but not the real face. They can easily understand that. Whereas things appearing to our perceptions as truly existent, but they're not truly existent. Well, worldly people don't know that, he said. So that's not exactly the same. He said there's a difference. One, the worldly people can easily spot it. The other worldly people are clueless,
So the Kuni Tadi 60 sugars or the Chavan Minda, the other of the Karsan. Think you about you do you do to Shagora?
No.
That Ronji made the you do to Shagora, you can Shiva Shaka Shagora, or Chavan was a thing to go. That deal landed that Ronu Deresha. Young the Tedaya, you think a tiny Shaval did the Zinzi Teba Hindu, Eugenia, tiny Shaval did the Shinjolo Teba, that they landed that cannot be in Eugene Brigade, no other mother, but no, you not. Yada goes to the Yanda Josh to us. Tina Yula. Tell you la Ugela ya in the Punzi Migita with in the Sunyazi Migini, when you be no true, but no here, but you buy in a Jingy devil ten in the Shan, Ugela young Loni Shash over race.
That again, think you follow.
Tell you about that. Tell you, Tampa, Ranju Silla, the Ranju Korang, the Avatas, good, again. Sunyala so the young Karzai Lobe goes the Sha, so Yanta goes the Shan Tegmar was Queen Namasiva, Roman goes on. That deal later to like the no at the Matomatic Bari, in a Jigdanga, top of the jazz and Chavashak, still in Jaswa. Teachers that tell you, tell him go the young Joe goes to the day in the Eugela Shasho to us. Eugela Triva Jigba in a Eugela Jideranga and the Trivato, Tom of the K or teacher, Eugela young Shasho race. That's what.
So the debate that's going between the Savatandika Madhyamikins and the Prasangic Madhyamikins is that Savatandika Madhyamikins assert that in terms of the objects, or we can say objective conditions, we can talk about mistaken and unmistaken or correct incorrectness, right? And whereas they do not assert the same thing in terms of subjective perceptions. And our Prasangica Madhyamikins say, no, that's same in the subjective perceptions. We can talk about two things, mistaken perception, unmistaken perceptions, or correct and incorrect perceptions. And Savatandika Madhyamikins have an issue with that. They say, no, you can't do that. Okay? And if you can't do that, then the Prasangica Madhyamikins say that, just like you say that face in the mirror appears as real face, but it's not the real thing. Right? So you talk about those two aspects. One is the correct aspect because there is the appearance of image of the face, which is correct. But that image appearing as a real face is incorrect or the mistaken part. In the same way, we talk from perception point of view, how things appear to us as truly existent, but they really don't exist that way. Okay? So it's the same, logic if you look at that, And then the Savatandika Madhyamikins come back and say, no, it's not exactly the same. I understand what you're saying. Because one is something that the worldly people can easily understand because they know face in the mirror is not the real face. So then that is what we call, they know the difference between correct and incorrect conventionality in that sense. But worldly people don't know that things appear to them as truly existent, but they don't exist that way. So they're not exactly the same thing. Okay, and so why this kind of positional differences come about is because Prasangika Madhyamikans believe in the principle of relativity. In other words, that the object and subject could only be established in relation to each other, okay, interdependent relationship, right? Because there is a perception, there is an object that is perceived by it. Because there is an object, right, there is a perception of that object. So it's relative to each other. Seventh-day Madhyamikas don't assert that. Seventh-day Madhyamikas said object is object there, right? We can talk about that. The subject is subjective perceptions. They are not, what called relatively, dependent on each other in that sense. So that's the big difference, in those two positions. And now, what is it? The Prasangika Madhyamikans, now tell the Seventh-day Madhyamikans, well, we can talk to the worldly people. There are certain perceptions worldly people know there are the mistaken perceptions, but there are certain perceptions worldly people don't know. These are the incorrect perceptions or the unmistaken perceptions. We can make the same distinction, just like you're making the same distinction in terms of the objects. I think things will hopefully get clearer as Geshe explain more.
Keta tanyi we shiva de shinji malo we na tanyi de chuba ngelo nyam na se ta tiri kanje tanda suk na we da sukta so na lo de ni tanyi we karsa shiba de shinji malo we na ini ti sukta na we shiba de chuba reg mar was rewa ko shinji mo yun jogo na ko chuba reg mar wa chu shi ni yu de jo to mar was ta de ya rong ji we men ro yin ji rewa tanyi karsa chuba gelo nyamna se dadi rongji me geja shirwa dadi len de de mi tanyi de chibi chuze tanyi de shiba kan de shinji lo mo lo sha be tanyi be shiba ni ji yin neng yo yin jang tanyi di ni so so yin bi ji xin ge dadi rong lu re de wa da lok ba de gun zo de ba se de ji kan lo gun zo jo sa ti ngo de ngo ma ro wa 강을 대만 조사 티고 꿈도 버리고 뭐 가지 다 권내서 데려고 와. 다다다 배는 멜론의 시기 순이었다고 때 gembo 다 창에 강사를 시에나 꼭 군접 장으로 대바 말봐.
맞아.
대체 내가 나 이 숙달라서 와도 돈이 다사게 강사들 대바리고 뭐 돈이 맞아서 대바리고 그랬어. 제다디 다다 대바당 군접 좋아서야 로디 로지고 군접다 대바님가 하고 있는데 닝여여 왔어. 근데 향사 카카가 있는데 닝여여 말이라 그러.
네. 긴긴한데 까나 베게 멜론 기달 참.
어다 멜론나 빼셔나 멜론나 그시 수니데 다 창던 게 뜻어 그 줌바도 그렇고 뭐 덴바 말아.
덴바 말발로.
덴바로. 다 시와도 뜻은 거는 덴바래 그러. 거기 내메데 카가 향사 카가래서. 어때는 수소서 있는데 덴바 향사데 돈이 뭐도 덴바 샤고 그래서 양다샤. 돈이 써서 그 뜻을 줌바 샤 그래. 어디 내줘 왔다 거지. 로직이야 이 배추 신저 뭐도 보니까 셨는데 예로 그러와. lok할 때는 야야 말만. 어디서?
게 랑게 비스 가서 수트라서베 친지 말로바 샤베나로게 친지 로바 샤벤다 취셰이나 아니겐디
취셰레도 그러와. 취셰인다 윤조도 말서 그러. 디히고다.
알다디 겐냐가 데토더게 가서 텐주버게 겐 취셰다 가서
어때 텐주버게 취셰게 참마샤고로와 요즘에들 유들 취는 참마만 샤라 유직ler다 지단고 취게인데 참마만 샤고 말디 분발 취수는 분발 참마만 샤라 가지 직발.
So when the Prasangika Madhyamikans say that our ordinary perceptions are mistaken perceptions overall, right? Because things appear to them in one way and they exist in another way. Okay. Now the Seventh-day Madhyamikans take issue with that. They said, if you consider ordinary perceptions of forms and auditory sounds as mistaken perception, then they cannot be unmistaken or established, right? The existence of their objects because they are mistaken. because there cannot be what we call because in their position, mistaken perceptions cannot be correct perceptions in any sense. Okay, they're mistaken. Whereas Prasangika Madhyamikan's position, as I mentioned this another day as well, they assert that ordinary perceptions are mistaken, but at the same time, ordinary people can also have valid perceptions as well, remember? So that is a big difference between the two positions. Okay? So we're dealing with this issue. So Prasangika Madhyamikans tell Sevatantric Madhyamikans, when we talk about correctness or incorrectness or mistakenness, unmistakenness, we're talking it from, in terms of two different perceptions, not in terms of one perception. We are not saying that for a particular perception, something appears as the truth and something appears as the false. Then you're right. It is a contradictory position, isn't it? How can, in regard to one perception, whatever that thing is, it is a truth as well as it is the false. That cannot be. Okay? But what we are really talking about is, for example, that in the case of people who already learned about the terminologies and things like that, when they see face in the mirror, they know it is the reflection of the face. This is not the real face. Okay, and so for those people, reflection of the face in the mirror appears as what we call not the truth. It is the incorrectness of the false, isn't it? It appears as a face, but it's not a face. And they know that, right? Because they have learned the terminology, the conventionalities, and all of those things. Are you with me so far? But small children who have not yet learned all the terms and terminologies, all those differences, for them, face in the mirror might appear as real face. Appear as a face, right? They may not know, oh, that is a reflection, not a real face. They just think that is a face. So for that perception, it appears as the truth, not as a false. Are you with me? So from the position of two different perceptions of people, we can say, that one is a false perception or the false conventionality, and one is the correct conventionality. Now, the same idea is related to other things. Like, for example, for those of us who have not realized emptiness yet, okay, for us, forms and auditory sounds, they all appear as truths, as realities, as correct. Okay? For those who have realized emptiness, right? For them, these things appear as false conventionalities because they know they appear to them in one way, but they exist in another way. See that? So when we posit, how in one sense forms and auditory sounds are not the truth of the matter, so to speak. These are the false conventionalities. For whom? We can ask that. For those who have realized emptiness as it is. But they are the truth or the correct thing. For whom? For us ordinary people who have not yet realized the emptiness of the forms and things like that. So there is no contradictions, in this regard. That's what the Prasangika Madhyamika is telling the Sevatantrika Madhyamikans.
Dita sula rang ngu tribe rang sing grikbe ngwa ne thondon de merong tanyi di chagwa la tin dawe se tanyi bi hingon ne ongbu shiba nam chuba yin la tele hembe tanyi bi shiba ranga nam yin ngon ne chuba mai be mingi de pen jigde be tanyi le melala nim yu lala me jewa hendes lala shibe sik jig yinjang yebe lala de mebe lala ye thon me je thon jig la me jo ba henu da dire gaji ene dire do de dar suzo an rang ngo de ri jo gu ba de ene ka thon da ban go ba shi re tanyi de go ba ma de thon dom de ba go ba re si wa ta tin de ene karsa gongge de su go re na 텐데 타지 신고는 엉부시와는 출바인이라 시대장다 돈이도 상게 되와 돈이도 상게 되시는 수소는 엉부 출바리고 와 다그 돈이 마도게는 가래 수소는 엉부시와디 출바하고 뭐 다그 그런 이유가 뭐 출하고 뭐와 어디에서 저 타지 시바다 출바 조사디 되시라 와다 텔레 셴베 타니에 비시바 랑가 나서 돈이 마도 거라와 뭐니 추바 많이 벼 에네 민게로 민게 됐다 추바 많이서 거라 추디레드 추바에 하고 말서 거라 추디 거라 근데 추바에 하고 말이스 제가 거기 타니에 힘을 떼서 계속 힘을디 타니에 봐서야 맹들 때네 거기 찍바 말이스 그리고 디패드 가서 먼저 그 라라니 위 라라미 세야서는 용게 라라데 메게 라레 카가라와 어디 찍바 그래서 거다
At the bottom of page 174 and on the top of 175, that's what Geshe is explaining now. So what the Prasangika Madhyamikans are saying is this, that we can talk about these two types of perceptions, if you will, that those who have realized emptiness as it is, these people understand that our sensory perceptions are mistaken perceptions, okay? But those who have not yet realized emptiness, they don't know that our sensory perceptions are mistaken perceptions. Although our sensory perceptions are mistaken, it's just that they don't know it. So they think that sensory perceptions are correct perceptions and, that's their position. Whereas those who have realized emptiness, they know that the sensory perceptions are mistaken perceptions. So we can talk about those two types of what called subjective perceptions, correct and incorrect in that sense. So in order to kind of explain that distinction, sometimes we may use the same terminology, but it has a different contextual meaning. Okay? And the example given in the textbook is the Tibetan word called lala. They translate it as some people. If we say, well, there are some people, but there aren't some people. Well, we are using the same some people, but these two some people are not the same people, isn't it? You couldn't be saying, right, the same people are there and same people are not there. Then you're really contradicting yourself, right? Because we're saying some people are there and some people are not there. Well, the word some means, different contextual meaning, right? So in the same way, sometimes when we use the word, what called tanye, right, the Phuntsok sort of conventionality, it could have a different contextual meaning, So that's we have to be understand.
대여 추바니 대여 마주원 지대 시와 랑가 되는 저기 오마베 마주와 민도도 되게 다 가지 소소나 시바데 마주리 양다리 세야데 지대 시와 되는 샤고 뭐지 오메로신다 근데 냠샤이 시모도 근데 심지 시와 추바면 샤 추임 샤로 그 디스와 다 양다도 세야데 지대 시골 때 샤세 되와
알레 양로 샤
어디 양세야데 오마베 에네 마주와 민도도 지대레네 데 랑마인 셰조 송바 따로 지대라이 데 랑마니 로베 되서 다 되게 지대니레 데 세야데 되게 다 숙소데 이네 야 유젠다데 유 태기 말레바 카지샤 트발 카지 샤로와 다 단다 디 트바데 지대니레 칼 데 랑마니 세야데 되로 다 지대레 카르사 지대니레 데 랑마니 오만주베 책지로와 이제 다 가진 지대니레야 코로나 때문에 덴바다 줌바지 락바지 샤요로 앞에 숭예다 어디 가래 에 줌바샤 그래와 수소데 덴바샤죠라 어때 지대데 랑마데스다 디 수소데 지대 덴바데레스 데 랑마 유제데 트레이트 레바데 인다 줌바데 스테이므라 지대데 랑마니 세야디 오마지베 세로와 어디 줌바 인사디 임베로와 어디 인사디 계속 못하러 쇼도 디 인스 딘즈 세야디 지사샤운데 자 타니베 희망은 심지랑가 롤 때는 샤고 뭐 엄마 비게 롤 때는 샤고 말이지.
So when we talk about what we call the Yangda Phuntsok, correct conventionality or unmistaken conventionality, and Lokpe Phuntsok, incorrect conventionality or mistaken conventionality. Now these kind of distinctions could only be made, from the point of view of worldly conventional perceptions or subjective perceptions, okay? Because as we say that from our worldly perception point of view, there are correct perceptions, unmistaken ones, and then there are the incorrect or the mistaken perceptions. So this distinction is not made from Madhyamikan's point of view per se, okay? Because according to Prasangika Madhyamikans, as I said this before, they regard all the ordinary perceptions as mistaken perceptions. Okay? Only the unmistaken perception is when you are in the meditative state of equipoise or emptiness, right? When your mind is directly absorbed in emptiness, that is the only unmistaken one, but the rest, is mistaken. Okay, so when we talk about correct and incorrect conventionality or mistaken, unmistaken conventionality, that is posited from worldly perceptions. Because for worldly perceptions, forms and sounds are correct, but the reflections of forms and sounds could be incorrect, isn't it? So it is from that point of view that we need to understand. I remember the other day we talked about how our worldly perceptions can be contaminated, or maybe I shouldn't say contaminated, could be influenced by errors, right? Temporary errors, right? Seeing double vision of the moon, right? Seeing the snow white mountain as a blue mountain, something like that. So those perceptions are incorrect perceptions. Why? Because of the temporary errors, the causes that is influencing them. Okay. And whereas our usual perceptions of forms and auditory sounds are correct perceptions, provided that they are not, they are not influenced by such errors. It's hard to say in English, errors. What I mean, the Tibetan word is called tulju. The tulju is what are called that makes your perceptions go wrong. That's the sense of it. Tulju means the causes making your perceptions wrong. Well, now that's not elegant translation at all. No wonder all the experts got the word errors there. Okay, so let's go with the errors. Yeah.
Teacher Omar Tita Triple Jola, Titana, you Zumba Joba, Mingete, you Demban Jona, Eugene Triple Joba, Devan Gaya, knows. Tanya the shirt and Yamata when David, Tanya the Zumba in Yukunzo Demba Joba, Mingete, Marik by Kaza, Marik Ranshi de Yukunzo de Shesum be Marik Kunzo Ting or Demba the Shurnam La Rang Wotoba. Joba Goba Kang or have Gunzo Pating or Zumbani Mingeo Sheros, dear that leisure. That you didn't teach that the Karsa Yanda said in Jidan Shama, the Oma with Yanda Shagma Larva. You did teach in the Oma Bagate in the only to the Triba Jogers, so the Danang only the Triba Jogger. In a couldn't try in the Yuzumba Sugalas of the Kun Joto Wars. You know, Yuzumbala in the Karsa. In the Shiba Zimbe, you job Gigamas, you dematuna in the Shiba Zimbe, you demajoto Maris. So that tell you get that you the Eugene got Zumba in Silverwa. She that Zumba Naza in the quad Triba in the Koya in the Hija Joto race. That they tell you 2 months Chijira. Job Karza Eugene Trivial job on Gawain, the round you mentioned the Rava. Tell you a little Mingavich.
Okay, thank you, Balu. The using you can Zumba so you can Zumba code the Karsoda.
Zumba that Rangi travel Shannon degree. What don't say Nina that Honda Jojoa. That do get the money with the Zumba. She told the Zumba to be Chassia Joro. Oh, Dickaset. Rangi by Rangi travel, Demato Kakache de Gora. Think you were going to gypsy.
No. So Geshe is explaining the concluding paragraph on page 175. And so when we talk about Yangda Kunzop, I struggle with translation of the word Kunzop. Usually we have, for example, Kunzop Demba, which translates as conventional truth, Samviti Satya. Okay. Now we simply say Kunzop, not the Demba. Okay, this is not the truth about Kunzop. So the thing I can think of is conventionality, but then it's still not capturing the whole sense here. But it also, the Tibetan word literally has a sense of falsity. Something is not true, false, Kunzop is, so the Pasangyaka Madhyamikan's position is that our ordinary perceptions are Kunzop, mistaken. Okay, that works in this case, okay? Because things appear to them as truly existent, but they don't appear, right? So it is mistaken with regard to the appearances. Nonetheless, they can establish correctly the existence of their respective objects. In other words, visual perceptions overall perceive the visible forms correctly. The auditory consciousness, hear the sounds correctly. Although there are mistaken perceptions, but they do, process the objects correctly. And there is no contradiction according to Prasangika. Although the seventh and the Madhyamika are like, what? What are you saying? Okay. And so Prasangika's position is that both object and subject are kunzov. If I say conventional, it doesn't capture the meaning. It means false. Why? Because their position is, if something is truth, in a sense, in truth, not false, then it should be findable under analysis. But nothing is findable under ultimate rational analysis. What it means is everything is false. Okay? The Tibetan word is kunzop. And once again, I just remind you, if you find a better translation of that, knock on my door, give me the words. Okay? So for Prasangika Madhyamikans, true existence, objective existence, inherent existence, existing by its own right, they all mean the same thing. Okay? Nothing exists from its own side, nothing exists truly, nothing exists inherently. Whereas Sevathantaka Madhyamikans make distinction among those terms. Okay? Things exist inherently, objectively for them, but not truly. So you saw that all these philosophical differences we have to keep in our mind.
어디서 가서 탄이 뒤셔서 제마다 문제베는 탄이 좀 군서 되면 민게때 말이랑 히르지 군서데 해성부시로 말이랑 히르지 군서데 세야데 데레 가지 군서 데베 다시에 셔거와 군서 뎀바시드는 덴사 덴진이 셔거와 뎀바 트바데 가지 술 데거선 덴진 원사 그러 뎀바 트바레 되어와 어디 또 돈돈 뎀바세야데 돈용고서 냠샤이 셔거고 나한테 trouble 뎀바인 라고와 다 팀멤버데 그 해달로 양타병 걸 대야면서 덴진 걸 뎀바서 될 군서 뎀바스 어디 셔거다 그 디칼 강고 뎀바서 군서 세야지 덴진 군서 세야지 다주야 디질 주거와 어디 틀샤 인식 그와 제팅과 뎀바다 쳔남라 랑기 모처바 고바 강고 샤부 군서바 디고 줌바 니 민게와 셔로세 어디 다다 줌바세 타니베 사마시 뎀바샤서 덴진시라 로기스타 군서 셔더와 셔더 로카가서는 요요마라 어디 게고 말래.
So as you can see on page 175, that when we talk about what we call samvritti, satya, or conventional truth, see the Tibetan word comes is kunzop demba, right? Conventional truth. Then the question we ask is what establishes the conventional truth as a truth? If you ask, conventional truth is established from the point of view of what we call grasping at true existence. Okay, for that kind of a perception, conventionality appears as a truth. So from that perception point of view, we assert conventional truth or samvritti satya. Still the conventionality is not capturing, I think, the whole sense. The Tibetan word is kunzop denba. Okay, it is truth in regard to the ignorant conception of grasping at true existence. Okay. Now, when we talk about ultimate truth, pramartha satya, tundam temba in Tibetan, it is truth in regard to the mind that is in the meditative equipoise on emptiness. Because that mind, only for that mind is it the truth. For other states of mind, it may not be the truth. Okay? So the ultimate truth, tundam temba, pramartha satya, is truth in relation to the mind in the state of meditative equipoise on emptiness. Okay? So we use two different states of mind to be able to establish the true truths: conventional truth, samvritti satya, and ultimate truth, paramartha satya. Okay, are you with me? Okay. And so what was that? So there is no contradictions from that point of view. Okay. Once again.
군저된 줌바 지바데 군저된 데바 마이나 계속하나 타니베 세미 줌바를 똑발을 차이 타니디 줌바 강인바 줌바 임바자는 샤르는 것이 그래서 중계를 기장년에 봐 신성아 거기 군저서 지바데는 군저된 마마인 자 책이도와 어디 계제서와 대지세야데 가르세나 ene pen melona shigi sunye sarvati jigde ranga ngwal demba mai sel tita ko demba mai to da ko na da maro to go ro ote su sever ma to zimba inze ganga karsa ene jigde te to sti kar demba mai se go maris ro da phumba ka sun jigde mo zimba de ro ka demba de ro so 거기 구서 demba de 구서 demba mai se adela melona shigi sunye sarvati jigde 또 더야 더 샤그 돼서 ro
So there is a quote from Chandrakirti's explanation of the middle way commentary at the bottom of page 175, which reads, "Whatever is false, that's the Phuntsok, even conventionally, is not a conventional truth." So what this really means is, for example, face in the mirror. That the worldly people, we understand it is false, isn't it? The face in the mirror appears as a real face, but it's not a real face. That part we know it is a false. Yeah? But every conventional phenomenon is not understood as a false by our ordinary perceptions, because, for example, forms appear as true for us, sounds appear as true for us. They are unlike the reflection in the face of the mirror. Okay?
대다 오마 왜 타이드 랑그 로라 콘데기 남샤 망보시 조바도 ngowa namji rangi deba tumu mayimbe ena takbe thona tangi de yebe be gozun de da hindi kai demba yi namba shaba sinje mo to sita sita nangos dire da gaji tenjo ga ya ani sheda ji mingyang ta yo zami se ya ji konde namsha sha digan ya in gando gedilang da sen de shaji ga ga jodan ji she ngoma zina 야 demba tribe ganli ya chaji ganga jogo 와. 세다 디 남자디 아니 시 착부레스 자 착부 저거 다 간지. 세다 디선다 아니 대인 남자디 야 아니 치지 뭐 오늘 저서 대인 배 교하면 저야 종게데 등산야 아니 공부를 해서 다 간지. 그러니까 자 제르 무슨 패니 뭐도 시행배지 자나 상다는 타이니데 메간 되고 와. 세다 디 그 샤사드 말하니 세다 딩이 남자 시점도게 배 공부 시부래 샤스다 디레샤.
그 민장 따위 상상의 자체 샤다데 그냥 가고 싶은 거 그러게. 대벌 주베톤의 자체 샤이도 가고 싶은 거 그러게.
말이 거인 남자지.
남자 제디와
콘도도 샤 땡겨도 마가 가가셔라. 어다 디 가가 체니 이니 팅유로 응원의 장상이 딩이 좀이 됐다 줘야지 시다들에 하시고.
Now we are on to in your translation. I don't know what they wrote is 14. There can't be chapter 14. Anyway, it's on unnumbered page 177. Okay, on the top. So what is said in the opening kind of paragraph is because of the complexities, of the things that we just talked about, it is rather very difficult to understand the difference between these philosophical positions that are being presented, where many schools of thought, they say that things are truly existent, right? Based upon that idea of the philosophy, things are truly existent. So then they could arise from causes and conditions, and they can function as they do. Whereas Prasangika Madhyamika can say that things are mere labels or imputations, right? That being said, things still arise from causes and conditions, and they function as they do. So there is a big distinction between these two positions, and it is very difficult, to differentiate between those two two positions. Okay, and so the implication here is even before Rinpoche appeared, that was like 14th century, even there were many great masters. Even their struggle, it seems like, to be able to differentiate between those two positions. For example, when some started to establish what they think is ultimate truth, reality, then they undermine the conventional realities. And one of the prime examples we talk about is, for example, Master Hoshang. Master Hoshang was, very learned scholar, and he was a very serious, person. But in the process of understanding emptiness, what he said is, well, nothing exists ultimately. It doesn't matter what do you do. Well, he destroyed the conventional reality, isn't it? So it's very difficult to find, masters, or it's just people who understand and can accept the two truths, side by side, so to speak, conventional truth and ultimate truth. When you try to establish one, you destroy the another one, and that is a problem. So whereas Lama Tsongkhapa, when he appeared in Tibet, that was his major contribution, how he tried to, explain that the two truths can coexist.
Dedar ngo mawe deba no kunzo de yeba ngokba na regret jeba shene ga gola. Rang kunzo de yenga la sawa yeba khele ba yang tongde ji khele mele ni drubshi yume yin la tela yang regret jeson rang ma la to se nya ne regret jeba na rang khele bu kunzo ba nam dang. Ngo ba na ji kun da ba ni regret no nyum dang meno na do soni. Onju de zo ngokba tanyi de meba de no so so ba de meba ke long go ba de ta tanyi no onju la so ba yoba ke le go ba ni chungbar thong de se chu kha la ya rang gi log ji di mi ji ngusung ke le je yang sha mu ro wal o me ti kar da ti ko na ni bar lom sing tendewe koateda jizo tembe jiang menzi par jowala tawa number tagbe se tongomban deba hindu mo nangos da direct tanda semzama ta kanji ronji menji de godu zang demba zaba godu zang kanji ripe jeba shi de go go wa o wa jo go go za ta ti go ida ti no da rong go zo de shaya ta ni ripe jeba shi sha go go was ko yemi yese dubji yemi ta jure ma da jile ene timen jumar so de o to ko ni su de zala ene karsa tondong ji ripe je na ene rong la kara ji yu ji ya ni me so ro wa so de ni ya me zan ta ene rong ji me je ka ya ripa de ya ki on so sha ya de la ya tondong ji ripe je ne ni ya me ji ba de ro wa ji ba ro wa o ti shi da ene rong la ene ta ji ba de sha sa ne ene 루다 오면 돼야 되다. 랑루 군조니인데 리베네 메데 케바지야 민도 건지 충어요 뭐도 돈달 민도서 다 하장 다 돼. 건지 거기 그래서 다 텔레네 때다 남다 있을라. 인데 때다 남다 있을라네. 인데 다 때도 송발 시거사. 저도 비제 민제바 저와 따와 남다기 동건번데바 힘도 뭐 나고 어디 다 그런 게 삼로 디데지였다. 지야 일을 미지바데 답에 돈이 더 따와 세네이스 어때 궁게도 불시 타르와 등산라 열시고 그래서 어때 다야도 타레스 거다 그래서 건도 태조하기 전에 가르데 유바셔도 리베지바데 쇼고 말와 그 리베지바시 셔도 다니야 뭐 제트 상마단다 민두라데 거라 어디서
When we refute true existence, then we do that through the application of rational analysis and reasoning, isn't it? So through rationality and through reasoning, so we prove or establish that there is no such thing as true existence. Okay. And so now, many schools, including Sevatandega, Madhyamikans, and schools below, which include Chitta Martins, mine only. Then they said that, then they think that we should apply the same rational analysis to conventional phenomena, conventional truth. Okay? So when we do that, nothing is findable under rational analysis, isn't it? So therefore, then they add up and say, well, now nothing really exists. That's really happened to at least Master Hoshang. He seriously engaged in understanding the emptiness, the wisdom gone beyond. Okay? And he put everything under rational analysis. So under that, nothing is findable. Then he concluded that, ultimately nothing matters. Okay? I have realized the ultimate view, because the ultimate view is the view of nothingness. Nothing really exists at the end of the game. So do as you please. So that destroyed the conventional conventionalities and conventional phenomena, isn't it? Yeah. According to Prasangika mathematicians, in order to establish ultimate reality, we have to use rational analysis, reasoning. In order to establish conventional reality, we should not use the rational analysis, right? For example, when we say that something exists, we accept as it exists, just like the worldly conventional established that it exists. We don't go and say like, what is that thing exists? Show it to me kind of thing. Well, when you go too deep, there's nothing you can find. And then you come to conclude like, well, nothing really exists. See? So we get into the same risky positions. Okay? So that's the big difference. According to Prasangika mathematicians, conventional realities are established by the worldly conventions, right? You accept as the worldly people say. In terms of ultimate reality, then you have to use the rational analysis and reasoning. Yes, but don't apply the rational analysis, the conventional phenomena, then you don't find anything and you're going to destroy everything. Okay. No. Not really. What is it?
That's Rogi was the 1000 and money in them, Digmars that never killing Rava. Tahayang money of Kela and Maveton Shower.
Right. All the schools of thought, they agree that if you don't find something until ultimate analysis or rational analysis, then that thing does not exist. It is a non-existent. Okay, they all agree with that. Okay, and so the Savatantrika mathematicians and school below. Okay, so the reason why they assert true existence is because they said, well, karma and the karmic actions and results exist. Okay, causes and conditions exist. So therefore, they must exist truly. Okay, they should be findable. Otherwise, if they are unfindable under rational analysis, then they should not exist at all. They should be non-existent. But that we can't accept it because karmas exist, they produce results, causes and conditions exist, bring the results. Because that's it, we know that. So therefore, we believe these things exist truly. Are you with me? Yes. At least they accept the outcomes of the karma and respect that. Now, in the case of Hoshang Mahayana, he also asserted that if something is not findable under rational analysis, it doesn't exist at all. So therefore, he concluded that nothing exists at all. Basically, no karma, no causes and conditions, because nothing is findable under ultimate analysis. That's what it is. So that nothingness itself is the ultimate truth, and I have understood it. So he really destroyed the what we call the conventionality and karma and all those things. But there's a quite difference in that same area. Okay, but whereas Prasangika mathematicians said that's true. If something is not findable under ultimate analysis, it doesn't exist. That's why we say nothing exists truly. It's not findable. But you should not apply the same rational analysis and reasoning to conventional phenomena because that is wrong. Okay, then you're going to destroy the conventional phenomena.
통데 다들 이 징게데 하샹이 다들 되고지 마와 나오세 딘자완 데다니 케방고아시베 땀디 메나데 나르시바타 리베 가자 무마시바 런신고베세 리베 타니베 남바샤와 탐지 지바시베 영다베 따와당 로베 따와 남 노는 노년당 만노는 만노 남 냠보르 손이 셰 신제로게 따와 첨부 임비 셰로스 다다디 하샹로게다 히라 두자레라 다고니 어디서 왔다 데다에서 가르사 데다니 케반 고아시베 땀디 메나시다 이 샤샤야 땀지 마레시 와라 ngarshiwa 리베가 장구마세다 기승어서 고타모 타모시다 리베가 장구 싱고야시 에니 리베가 장구 마시 용데 하장 기승에 지가다 가사로다 세다 리베가 장구 마세다 에니 티마제다 에니 유제 당가 딱동제 니고여레 삼네 어디 삼바다네 라진고베 리베 타니베 남버샤바 탐지 직버 시베스 세다다 타니데메 중고마도 요마르시고와 세다 랑도 윤데 샤지강가 직버 시누고 데르와 시베 양다베 따와 당 로베 따와 남 노는 노념다 마노나 마념노 마노 냠버송이 치조르 따 가르사 따와 셴부이 비시로서 어디를 그 뜻을 가지 하상게 베는 뜻을 가지 섬로다나 개회 섬로다나다 에네 메기야 섬로다나다 직바레서 거다 그 가서 콜 베기 뇌지야 직바레서 베는 키더비는 키나부서견 깔부서견 직바라 스마스 쪽으로 왔어 내가는 난갈 띠 나부니 마든 깔부니 마든 직바레서 게들롱도서 섬로 당시 코라싱아마도 요마르 시야 예르시 요마르시고라 어디 영어다 따와데 다 돈이도 따데라와 다 시절로 따와데 지야 예르 비시게들와 다 디니 쳐봐 마주 자고데 두시고 시고 다 시절 로다 셴보레스
So when on page 178, right on the top, so as we talked about this, how, for example, we use Hoshang Mahayanis as a prime example, how he ended up in the position of nothingness, right? He didn't take it lightly, he really seriously engaged in this thinking, but somehow he got into the wrong direction here. Is because, as we talked about this quite some time ago, in the first place, he failed to identify precisely the object of negation by reasoning. Okay? And so he thought that in order to establish the existence of everything, we must put everything under rational analysis, and it should be findable. Okay? If something is found under rational analysis, then he thinks it exists. But if something is not found under rational analysis, it should not exist. So when he put everything under that microscope, rational analysis, he couldn't find anything. So then he concluded, well, nothing exists at all, really. Everything seems to exist and function for our mistaken consciousnesses. We are all duped, but in reality, nothing matters. So therefore, he propagated his philosophy of nothingness. And he said, it doesn't matter whether you think positively or negatively, it's the same. Both positive and negative thoughts bind you in samsara. Does it matter whether the white dog bites you or the black dog bites you? It doesn't matter. They bite you. That's what it is. Okay? It doesn't matter whether the white clouds, cover the sun or the black cloud. Who cares about the color? The sun is, covered. Okay? He said that's what it is. He said the only way out of it is just don't think at all. Don't think positive, don't think negative. Just be in the nothingness, and then you will be liberated, right? And that's how he ended up in that kind of the wrong position. It is a wrong view, And so here he said, that kind of wrong view does not please the learned and the wise and the scholars. It is, it's not one of those things. Okay.
Well, this is what 돈이 마도 권리 대가서 밑에서 기딩도 랑도 요 중국 요새 들어와 어디서 저 디단다 기딩대 개발도 세로다 군로서도 다 세다 군데 배작로지 그 양행되어 와 여와다 섬두자 때 체도 중국 요 지는 그 담야를 채워 말스 세는 거까지 채워 말스 그이는 너요 말스 거라 어디서 거 그런 다 돈이 또 산다 다 롱돌 계좌요 말와
No.
돈이 맞아 그 제가 당근 좀 탐마도 그때 중국 요새 우리 시월 이거
So Hoshang, I mean, he has put a lot of thought into this, and he thinks that those of us who have not realized the emptiness, for him it's the nothingness, right? Things seems to make some difference, Yes, there is seems like a value difference between gold and silver, and that kind of thing. He said, but that exists only for our mistaken, mistaken perceptions, consciousness. But ultimately, he said, does it matter whether you are bound by the gold chain or the silver chain or the copper chain? It doesn't matter. You are bound. He said, it really doesn't matter. It looks like there's a difference. One is gold and one is silver, but it really doesn't matter when it chains you up. You are in samsara. And so that was his theorizing about it.
되는 된다와라 링디 공장 냐다바 시다와라 중세 자우야 녀르 문로와 마시 링디 로데 콘데기 땡데기 남바샤바 탐지 랑 로라 루에 땡중게 땡중게스 람나 체현디 겨와임 비셔로세 다디 다 로그와임 유네 거서 다디 지야 일메시베데 가세 고무이나 ene ya sangje ya de ba sa ta ne yo ma ris ti me ma su ta do ring du do go se do go ta ko chi ya yil se wa be na ene kar sa be ku ba na yi do cha do go wa lang do ji ya lo mi za ri me ene ten jung ti to ya ji da yo ma ro ngon du sang kar tar ba ta da sang ji go ma ta ne ji mi ji ten jung ge dong yi do go se go ro ta ti dong yi do la be ka ya la ja ti ngo ne ra gi che yu cha go ro o ti se go ta
We're still on the top of page 178. So as I said some time ago, that that Hoshang's view of nothingness became quite popular, right, in Tibet, during his heydays, his golden era, kind of thing, and it still has a remnant of some of those thinking in certain Tibetan thinking, and so that philosophy of nothingness, it is a big obstacle. For us who are seeking liberation and enlightenment, okay, putting ourselves in the state of nothingness is not going to improve us at all, okay, because it's not going to be an antidote to get rid of our ignorance or all the delusions, okay, and we will never cultivate any wisdom or learning because all of those things are binding factors according to that philosophy, right? So you do nothing, you don't think anything. So in that sense, we really become more stupid, actually, because we are never going to learn, never going to cultivate any path, never do anything, because we just do nothing, And not only it obstructs us from attaining liberation and enlightenment, as a matter of fact, it takes us further away from enlightenment, right? And we really become stupid and stupideers, and is there a word called stupidist? Anyway, if not, make one. And then it really takes us further away from our spiritual goals, So therefore, it is a great obstacle. On our path, because in the Buddhist teachings, as we know, the idea of dependent arising or pratyek samutpat takes a central stage. We have to understand how everything is dependently arising, which is intimately connected to emptiness. Once we understand the view of dependent arising and the view of emptiness as complementary, then we are able to cultivate the path, counteract our delusions, find our way out of samsara, isn't it? But if we do nothing, right, then how can we be liberated? There's no way out of that. Okay.
Zero that ngonzo in the big tourism share in the Shigurs, right? I have no tourism share, tourism share in the Hako the gum. Didn't he have Geshe than the he was Hija Chambush in Yabegus, didn't some Jagos?
No.
That quite no, you didn't. 하고 지가 신고 말다가 지가 터서 지가다 가까이요 왔다 집샷이 돼야 되고 나거지
Like, really the theory is that we have to apply these three things to us, right? Thirba means listen to teaching or study. Then contemplate the meaning of the teaching, samba. Then meditate on the ascertained meaning of the teaching, gomba, right? So this threefold approach of study or listening to teaching, contemplate, meditate, this is our way to progress on the path and find accomplish our spiritual goals. So in the process of doing this, what we say, we are expanding our knowledge, right? We are expanding our compassion. We are progressing, right? Now, if we follow the view of nothingness, that means whatever we know or we don't know, it really doesn't matter. So we really don't know much to begin with. Now we are not going to learn anything more because we begin with nothing and then we are going to stuck in that. Okay? And so it really doesn't help us to progress on the path to our goals. And this is what I said. The only thing we can do is just have good time, have fun, and that's all. Yeah.
Teacher, woman Jubales, Mihini Giraji Mediji, Nagi Daji Taba, Jimamiso Taba, Tidaji Dela Jayami, Mudiban Deba Tumo Maibata, Maibata, Nartangba, Dar, Rangdeng Omo, Namji, Deba Tumo Maibe, Dawanam. Nam Rang Gunzop de Yang, Medo, Hiesum Beton Sheber Chaos, or Tibra Datilla. Hashang Divana is not or dark hanje any Karsa. Beginning now Danishi Tawa, Jumamu saw Taba Kansa Direta Kanje Chiruba to the dark was the Karsa, any Jitsu said, Jitong Yesa, draw down the main gate in the Yomare.
No.
To get the you Tungal Yorwa, Tungal Yor, there's no tiny the Mary go Tribang Walla Yorwa.
No.
제가 딱 언들 동백해야 레기에서 자지 강가때다 치료 딱봐 넣었다 해니 찍고 찍경래고 와. 딱 간지 충고 요번 찍봐라. 더다 매번 찍봐라고 와. 어쨌든 다 뒤통식이 있어서 근데 딱 지는 공용적 찍봐라고 와. 대신에 간도 남주 있는 치료도 다 흉모번 까네 비 치부도 뭐못 가고 와. 다 하잖아 이제 까먹어 와. 찍봐라 와. 어디서
So there is a quote from Chandagiri's commentary on the middle way, in the middle of page 178. And so what Lama Tsongkhapa was saying is that he would like to explain in detail the issues related to what we just talked about. If we follow the view of nothingness that the Master Hoshang, propagated, because he said everything seems to exist. Not he didn't say seem to. He said everything exists for our false perceptions. Right? In reality, nothing exists at all. Okay. Then there would be no difference between the realities and the truth that Buddha has talked about in his teachings, and many of the philosophical positions that Buddhists have refuted in non-Buddhist traditions, i.e., actually the Hindu philosophies. Like in many Hindu philosophies, how they talk about the Atma, isn't it? The soul is permanent, okay? And, but in reality, there is no permanent soul, okay? But permanent soul exists for a false perception, isn't it, okay? Or that in some philosophy, they talk about something called universal principle. We call it Chizo, right, this principle, or whatever that is,